Good evening. Welcome to the Pullman City Council meeting for this Tuesday, February 28th. And welcome. And first of all, Mike, would you please take roll?
Sure. Mayor Johnson.
Present.
Councilmember Dubin.
Here.
Councilmember Benjamin.
Present.
Councilmember Wright.
Here.
Councilmember McCall.
Here.
Councilmember Weller.
Present.
Councilmember Parks.
Here.
Councilmember Guido.
Here.
Under announcements tonight, the city of Pullman was honored as one of the 112 out of 281 cities and government organizations recognized as the 2023 Well City recipient by the Association of Washington Cities. That's the Employee Benefit Trust. The city has now earned this recognition 19 consecutive years. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of cooperation from all our employees to file all their material that they need to have. It takes a lot of work by our Wellness Committee. We're very grateful for that. But the big point about that from the city standpoint, it saves us 2% on all our charges as far as all the health care that we take care of all our citizens with at the City Hall. So we really appreciate that. City of Pullman will soon release its first ever monthly digital newsletter. You can subscribe today so you can tap into all the good things happening around our organization and the community. You can sign up by visiting, and again, this one works. I just did it this afternoon. Visiting pullman-wa.gov and then /subscribe. That works out really well, and you can just sign your email to that, and you'll get included. Pullman Fire Chief Mike Heston promoted two individuals, Blake Richards to captain, Stephen Portraz-Lee to lieutenant. Congratulations to both for their achievement. We wish them the best in their new roles and their new responsibilities. On February 22nd, Pullman Police Chief Jake Opkennorth swore in police trainee Jordan Schellebarger, who recently completed the Law Enforcement Academy with the Houston Police Department. Came here with his fiancée, and we're very happy for that because we don't have to send him to academy. We can send him to the 2-week equivalence, and that saves us, the city, a lot of money. And so congratulations, Jake, on finding almost a lateral transfer. That's great. We appreciate that. Pullman Parks and Aquatics and Fitness Center will be closed from March 11th to the 19th for the annual cleaning. You can vote now for the 4 films to be shown for the summer's outdoor movie series at Rainey Park, Movies in the Park. You can visit our Facebook or Instagram page for details. You can get your votes by March 17th. The official movie lineup will be announced late in April. Crews should start strategically removing playground pieces at Harrison Tot Lot as early as next week. That will remain open, but please heed the posted safety signage and or barriers in the area. This work will prep the playground for new equipment to be installed later this spring. And not only at Harrison Park, we'll also have it at other parks. We'll have new playground equipment as well. WSU accounting students will be on hand at Neal Public Library Saturdays from noon until 4 to provide free tax preparation assistance on the federal level. Assistance is available through April 8th, excluding March 11th and March 18th for spring break. All students are IRS certified, so you can contact Library Director Dan Owens if you have some more questions on that. Those are the announcements tonight. Next on our agenda, confirmation of appointments. First of all, we have election of Mayor Pro Tem and alternate Mayor Pro Tem. And you see in your packet, they have the listings of the past Mayor Pro Tems and alternates. And we'll open the floor now for any nominations and how the council plans to proceed. Okay, Pat?
I would like to put Francis Benjamin name in for consideration for Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay. Others? Okay.
I would suggest following our usual schedule, Megan would be the Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay. Usually we always do the, as you mentioned, they usually take the alternate and move it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other suggestions?
I'd like to recommend Pat for the alternate Mayor Pro Tem.
Pat for alternate. Okay. Well, we might have a spirited election tonight here. Okay, so we have Francis, Megan, Pat for alternative. Any other names that want to come up here? Okay, so how would you like to proceed? Since this is a council appointment, would you like to have a vote on, we'll go for, first of all, we had Pat nominated for alternative. Would you like to, or any other names for alternative? Okay. Nathan.
1 second. Love to hear Councilmember Wright. I know we usually follow the scheduling. Is there a reason, Francis, as far as the next?
No,
Okay.
Okay.
but if I could make a suggestion, I would gladly give up my, my candidacy for alternate and suggest that Francis perhaps become alternate mayor pro tem and put his name in for that, and then that would follow the usual progression. Just a suggestion.
I think that's probably agreeable. Usually we have some
And I'm fine
newer
with
person.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So much for spirited election.
In the interest of upstanding.
It's a
There we
great,
go.
you know,
Work together.
just like working together. So I'm hearing Megan for Mayor Pro Tem and Francis for the alternative. Is that acceptable, this council?
Indeed. Yes.
Okay. Then we have that one taken care of. All right.
Excuse me, Mayor.
We need an official vote, is what you would like?
Yes, please, a motion and a vote.
When you have a council, it's agreement. I just didn't want to screw anything up, okay? So, okay, do you want to make somebody want to make a motion on it?
I move that we accept the aforementioned slate unanimous acclamation.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that was unanimous. Okay. Any opposed? I felt pretty confident about that one. All right. Now come to the next item under confirmation of appointments, number 2, to confirm the appointments for the Environmental Resilience Commission. And you have my suggestions up here. 3-year term, Dr. Patrick and Larry Clark. For 2-year term, Charles Uga and Tanya Chen and Stephen Johnson. And for the 1-year term, Adrian and April Hume. And I can tell you that Tanya Chen is one of the students that we met at Pullman High School in the Environmental Club. And when RJ and I were there, and then we had that Environmental Club actually vote who they would like to recommend who could go for this. So it worked out really well. We can have a high school student who's very active with the Environmental Club at Pullman High School. So with that, do I entertain a motion to support this?
I move to approve the slate as presented.
Second.
Moving second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much, and we'll get that group going again. Now comes item number D on our agenda tonight, and that's the Downtown Pullman Association. We've got Holly all set up with her PowerPoint and everything ready to go. So, Holly Greystone.
Hello and good evening. Thank you, Mayor Johnson, City Council members. My name is Holly Greystone, as you already know, but for those who are joining us for the first time, you may not know who I am or what the Downtown Pullman Association is. I will start with a little bit of history about the DPA, a little bit of background on what the Main Street program is, and then I will talk about our strategic plans that we came up with this last November, where we're at in that process, and then we'll end with questions. So if I don't cover anything during this presentation that you would like to hear, we'll go ahead and get that at the end. Thank you so much. So the Downtown Pullman Association, or the DPA for the rest of this presentation, is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to create and sustain to create and sustain vitality in our historic downtown. We're here for our small businesses, our property owners, and we support our historical downtown. We promote our local culture, and we're partners with those who would help us collaborate to build a thriving community. Downtown Pullman is the heart and soul of our community, and it connects us and provides us a place where lifelong memories are made. We are a Washington Main Street affiliate. We are applying for a Main Street designation this May. So we're about 90% through our application process. We're working with Main Street along the way to make sure that we have crossed all the T's, dotted all the I's. We have a lot of support from our community partners, our city, Washington State University. So we have a really good, strong application going forward this May. And the reason that is important, for those who don't already know, basically as an affiliate, we went and told Washington State, hey, we're going to follow these set of standards as a community organization to build an economic community here in our downtown area. And to apply for that designation, we're continuing that to another level, another high standard of practices that we're applying for. With that, it also opens up the door to B&O taxes, or business and occupation taxes, which businesses in our community could then, through the Washington Main Street Tax Incentive Program, they can give that to the DPA, and that money would stay local and support our programs and our events. In addition to that, and unique to this particular program, participating businesses can receive a 75% tax credit the next tax cycle. You do not get that with any other donations. Sometimes you get 50%, sometimes you get 25%. We've all donated to some organization and had presented that to our CPAs to get some sort of tax incentive back. This is only one that you could get 75% of that back, and it goes to your local community. And it's non-competitive. It does get competitive if you want to go for a little extra. So because of COVID, the legislation passed from $2.5 million to $5 million cap on how much B&O taxes can be donated. What that means is we went from, as a designated entity, if we had been there, if we had applied for this, we wouldn't have only gotten up to $133,000. They've changed it now so Main Street programs could get up to $233,000 to their program. That's a big difference, and it can really help change a lot of things in a community like ours. So a little bit of data here. I'm not sure if you guys had a chance to look at this prior to today's meeting, but the National Main Street program, they do a revenue impact. They do this every year, and just in 2021, they had $5.7 billion reinvested in their Main Street programs, and netted 6,600 businesses. But more than that, since this program started in lost my spot here, sorry. Was in 1980? Yeah, this program started in 1980, and it's added about $70 billion in investments in Main Street programs. And it has also added additional revitalized historical buildings, like a facade improvement program, for example. So this program has been around since 1980, and it continues to exist throughout communities all over this country. The DPA is part of 1,200 communities here in Washington State. So we have a lot of partners. I work with a lot of executive directors throughout Washington State. I had a chance to go to Wenatchee and learn quite a bit about the program, meet other executive directors, talk to them about their program and about their, the things that they kind of had to struggle with, dealing with vacant buildings, dealing with construction, how do they navigate that, building communication plans. And so we've had a wonderful opportunity to build our knowledge base and bring that back here to Pullman and start a little bit ahead of the ball, as it were. This is some data points from the Washington Main Street Resilience Study. They wanted to know what the impact was on Main Street communities through COVID. And because of time, I won't go into details, but I did drop the link to you guys prior to our meeting today, and I'm happy to share that out publicly with our community after today's meeting. But in the basic summary of this is that communities that had an established Main Street program, they bounced back 24% faster than communities that didn't have a Main Street program at all. So the fact that we have one now and we're working towards designation is a huge step for Pullman. This is that slide with that 24. It's actually 23. I misspoke. So a little bit of that history I was mentioning earlier. In 2018, the DPA was officially formed, and in 2020, the City of Pullman and the Washington State University, the Pullman Chamber of Commerce, and the DPA signed a memorandum of understanding. And I know you guys know this, but for those who don't already know this, this agreement calls for us working collaboratively together to enhance our downtown economic vitality and to continue to make downtown a desirable community for residents, families, students, and tourists. And it's because of these commitments and the financial support of the DPA has been able to obtain what's called the Affiliate Capacity Grant, and that's through the Washington Main Street program. It was a pilot program that was passed through legislation, and we were lucky and fortunate enough to get it twice. Usually, this particular program, people got it once, but we were able to get it twice. These funds help us establish a physical office in downtown. It covered wages and overhead expenses and training, covered the training going to Wenatchee and the time I spent there and the skills that I was able to bring back to this program. And it continues to support us for, I believe, for another 6 months, if I recall correctly. So we got it for 2 years. And again, that was because we had the support of our community. The DPA was made possible through these commitments, the financial support, both from the City of Pullman and Washington State, but also in the partnership with the Chamber, the Pullman 2040 Group, and the Town Gown Cooperative. Let me introduce you to our team. Our board of directors, they have been a huge support throughout this. Many of these are individuals who are here from the beginning of our program and continue to stay on and help our organization grow. Our board president is Willow Falcon. She is a business and property owner of Nashi's and Blasphemy. Judy Cold is our vice president, business and property owner of Sanctuary. Tom Handy is our treasurer, and he's a business and property owner of Paradise Creek Brewery. Megan Guido is our secretary and city councilwoman. Haley James is a campus chief of staff at WSU. Bobby Ryder, member at large and president of Pullman Civic Trust. She also chairs one of our committees. Molly Golden, owner of Lumberyard and Timber, and Maureen Kowski, executive director of the Chamber of Commerce. In November of 2022, we held our strategic planning meeting, and we invited Jonelle McCoy, from Washington Main Street to help lead us and guide us through the process. As part of the training that we get when we say we're going to be an affiliate, they provide us with a lot of support, a lot of resources, training. In this case, she came down and provided additional support and resources for developing our strategic priorities and helping us to individualize those as we approach, as we push and pursue our mission and vision. So she came down, we put up a Gantt chart, like, I don't know, it felt like it was 8 feet, 10 feet long, and we set out based off of all of our committees, which are based on the 4 points of the Main Street: economic vitality, design, promotion, and outreach. And we laid out what our goals are for the next year. So let me just get to that real quick here. Yeah, so we identified our goals, which I've already told you. So let me just tell you what we've done so far with that. We hired an executive director. Hi. We did 6 months in training. We set up an office in downtown. We formed the 4 committees that I mentioned. 2 of those committees, the design committee and our outreach committee, have applied for 3 grants. And they would not have been able to pursue those funds if it wasn't for the financial support of the city and WSU. In addition to that, our Economic Vitality Committee is working with Cougar Solutions to identify some opportunities in the downtown area, and we're in the middle of that process now. We built a database for reporting to Main Street. They need economic data that we are producing in downtown to know where we're starting and where we're going over time, so we have a benchmark. And this is a requirement, part of those standards that I mentioned earlier. In addition to that, we assisted Welch Comer and the City of Pullman with communications about the project downtown Pullman and sharing out the storyboard. And I will talk a little bit more about that in a moment. We also did and had 2 successful events. We had the Harvest Festival and Chocolate Decadence. I'm going to briefly talk about the Harvest Festival. If you guys did not have a chance to participate in this, I highly encourage you to do that this year. It was a lot of fun putting this on. The Harvest Festival originally started with the DPA in 2019, but we had to put it on hold because of COVID. And then thanks to Promote Pullman, they held it in 2021. And then together, we collaboratively worked together and put it on for 2022. We went from an average of 500 participants to 1,200. The street was packed. Packed. I have video, couldn't put it into this presentation for time, but I will be using it for marketing later, you will see it. I would literally stand on the streets and say, Happy Halloween, and the entire street, both sides, erupted with cheers and Happy Halloween. And I got a couple of videos from that. And that's just the tip of that, right? It's our first event, and it was so exciting to see that, and I can't wait to see it this year. And then Chocolate Decadence, many of us are familiar with Chocolate Decadence. The Chamber of Commerce has held this event since 2009, and we had the opportunity to continue this sweet tradition and hosted it for this first year. I also had the opportunity to walk around and engage with every business that participated. We had 22 participating businesses in this event. We had people who never heard of this event or heard of some of these businesses come down and engage. And we were seeing some pictures of people enjoying some of these delicious treats. We had our promotion committee handmade some cards. We had a golden ticket giveaway. We had donations from our local businesses. And as I walk around, I'm just going to say a few quotes that I picked up while I was out on my walk, and I will keep it brief. I would never have gone in there. This is something new and exciting. This is fun. People actually came in and explored the business rather than just taking a treat and go. And there was a lot more that I have from that. It was just exciting to be able to bring something to our community after such a wonderful organization that held it since 2009. Big shoes to fill. All right. So our strategic goals and how we have them set up right now is that we are working on strengthening our relationships with our businesses and property owners. We're launching a new website and branding. We're working with a WSU student who's volunteering their time to develop our website and all the different pages involved in that, and she has been fantastic working through that process. I sat in on the city's discussions around branding, and we're using some of the color hex codes to match some of the colors that already exist within our brand, but making it a little more cohesive. We're also looking at the text style that is being used and recommended from the branding organization you guys are working with, Arnett. So we're working on finalizing those designs. Our Economic and Vitality Committee is working on tools for new and existing businesses. Our Outreach Committee and our Board of Directors is working on identifying and pursuing diverse funding revenue. And obviously, applying for that Main Street designation is huge. We won't know until a few months after we apply in May. And when we get that notification, we certainly will be celebrating, but it won't take effect until the first Monday in January. So we're super excited about that. In addition to that, we are supporting businesses throughout downtown construction. Two of our committees that I mentioned earlier are applying for grants. They're applying for grants to help activate the spaces behind some of our businesses that face Main Street to create safe and accessible areas. So for example, behind Rico's and Neil's Flowers, we have some unsafe terrain there with the drain and some other issues that are going on there. And one of our committee members, Bobby Ryder, has worked tirelessly with her committee to pursue funds and increase lighting and visibility back there. And I had an opportunity to sit there while she talked to the business owners and property owners to really bring them together to make this happen. So those applications are out. We obviously haven't heard back yet, but this is just one of the things that we're doing. I'm meeting bi-weekly, not bi-weekly, excuse me, every 2 weeks with the city, Welch Comer, and the Chamber of Commerce. And sometimes Francis is able to join us, actually most often he is, to discuss communication plans going through construction. And we've been providing all the resources that we have to make that happen. We are currently building out toolkits that are going to be specifically targeting some of the needs that might be identified or have been identified for businesses through construction, and we're rolling those out currently. And then in addition to that, in April, when Welch Comer presented their community engagement plan through phase 2, we took on what we could based off of those communications plan and have made ourselves available and have met with Welch Comer regularly and have participated in a 2-week social media campaign in June, I believe? Yeah, in June, 2 weeks in June, where I went out to businesses with QR codes, also utilizing our social media. We used multiple newsletters. We certainly have areas of improvement that we have identified and look forward to expanding that. And then in addition to that, I got to meet with Dan, our librarian, to join him on his podcast. I didn't know we had a podcast. Cool. And on July 21st, that was posted, and we talked about the DPA as well as the project downtown Pullman as well. So, downtown Pullman, as I'm sure you guys are already aware, it's a big topic of conversation regarding our construction project and investments that our city has taken, is on the precipice of something truly amazing. The city has invested in our organization and in downtown, and it's a sign of its commitment to its heart of its community. And when I took this job as the first executive director that the Downtown Pullman Association ever hired, I was overwhelmed by all of the expectations and hopes and dreams and passions. Everyone came out and just, they wanted everything and they wanted it now. And it was so overwhelmed. And what do? You know you want to help your community. You want to help our community. And I didn't know where to start, but I had the support from our city, our Chamber of Commerce, our board of directors, our chairs of our committees to help me grow through this and develop the tools and resources. And we continue to do that. We're still considered a young organization. And I'm very excited that I had that opportunity, and I appreciate you guys and many of the individuals who came here today in support of this conversation. I really appreciate that. And though our memorandum of understanding is ending next year, that went by fast. It's ending next year. I hope that the city will continue to be an active partner. And as it stands, our board of directors is made up of business and property owners in downtown, as well as representatives from the city, Washington State University, and the Pullman Chamber of Commerce. And for any Main Street organization to succeed, we must have a strong, firming relationship with our community and our city. In summary, why do we care? Why does this matter? The Main Street program works. I already talked to you about those numbers and what the National Main Street says. For every dollar investment into your Main Street program, $32 of investment goes into the downtown. That's just on a national level for an established organization. In the resilience study I shared with you earlier, conducted during 2022, it showed that communities with established Main Street programs bounce back 24% faster than communities without a Main Street program. It works. And together we can make that happen for Pullman. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Comments, or we move on? Nathan? Okay, turn your mic on, please.
Oh, thank you. I do have a few. Holly, I have to say, you have been given an important, if not one of the most important roles in the future for Pullman, especially right in downtown. I'm really encouraged by your enthusiasm, the collaboration that you've shown, the presentation, spectacular.
Thank you.
I have a few questions, and I'll just start on them, and then if you want to answer as I go along. So how many businesses currently are a part of the DPA, members of the DPA?
We don't currently have a membership. We're still
Okay.
exploring that as a revenue option. By having a membership, in a way, it says we have created a buy-in, as it were, but we are looking at other ways to try to reduce the economic impact on our businesses coming out of COVID. So for example, with our our events, we didn't charge for participation during this time, so we absorbed the costs. And that might change going forward depending on where we're at financially. But also just, we want to do more. And there's only so much we can do with the funds that we have. So we have to consider those options.
Okay, great, thank you.
So the answer, all of them.
Yeah. Now, I noticed with your strategic goal summary, there wasn't, so for me, when I look at you wanting to add members in the future and so on, a strategic outreach plan, I would assume would be a part of that. You have great...
And it is.
Okay.
I had to cut this presentation down for time.
Okay.
So I had a 20-minute presentation, I just cut down to 10. So, but yes, it is part of our, I have a whole board, and I can share it out on social media, I can share it out to you as well. I'm currently working on, as part of a requirement of our standards for Main Street designation, it has to all be inputted into a work plan. And when that work plan's done, I plan to share that out with the city, either through Megan as a city representative on the account, on our board of directors, but I'm happy to also share that out directly to you. But it will be out on our website for our community to see as well.
Awesome. So I was wondering about new entrepreneurs, new businesses, but I know, you have a few that you're dealing with. Personally, we've talked about that. So I have heard some concerns that some new businesses, and I've eaten at different businesses downtown who have explained that they haven't been approached by TPA. They knew, Marie, of course, but not by yourself. I encourage them to reach out to you. But some also longstanding businesses feel that they are being excluded.
Sure.
So I'm not going to put you on the spot. I'm just
happy to
mentioning.
answer the question.
Yeah.
We had to make a strategic shift in our organization. As a new organization, my board of directors felt it was important that we took time to actually build our foundation as an organization. We didn't have fully formed committees. We needed to spend time building out the foundation for that rather than just throwing volunteers in, not giving them the support and resources to be successful. So we needed to spend time, and as the only employee, that's kind of what happens. In addition to that, I needed to build out a penciled out version of what our website's going to look like, identify our brands, work on our strategic priorities, can finish my training. And I know that doesn't answer the question, and it doesn't certainly skirt the issue that you're addressing. It's something that I want to do on a more regular basis, and I'll be working on that going forward to have a more scheduled visits going out to our community members, hopefully very soon.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm just expressing what has been
appreciate that.
expressed
Thank
to
you.
me, and I totally, like I said, I'm very impressed. The thing that I would like to ask, and we've talked about this a little bit, but I am bringing this up in public.
Sure.
Working, as you know, I've been working with Penny Martinez up at VMAS, Veterans Military Affiliated Students at WSU. And one of the topics brought up was military discounts downtown. And as Penny brought up to me, veterans, students bring in $2 million into our community regularly. And it would, from what she expressed, students would be interested in going downtown. Now, again, that always seems to be, our topic. But veterans and students might be more interested if there are discounts down in the downtown. And we've discussed this, and I know it was on your board, but you have so much going on. I just wanted to bring it up again and say it's a very,
It's
the
actually
right thing to
it's sitting
do.
in what I call a parking lot.
Yeah.
We have where
I
there are
remember
things
you
that we
saying,
have
yeah.
that we know we want to do, but we have strategic priority goals that are higher up.
Yeah.
Not our vets are amazing. I'm married to a vet, right? So not discounting that at all, but getting our Main Street designation, getting our community committees up and running, those things are a little bit more priority so that we can have an established program to then move into that. So we get to pull those things off of the parking lot and start executing those things. Kind of like a waterfall approach. When we have the resources ready to execute, we move it to that spot and make it happen.
Great. Well, I appreciate it. Is there anything that we as a council, as a city, further can help you with, do your job, the downtown, because it's very important, I know, to all of us?
Well, you guys are doing it already, having these conversations, first of all, and then having a representative on our board of directors. And then I've had an amazing opportunity to work with Jennifer Hackman. She has been instrumental in helping me understand nuances of our community, how to navigate city council, how to get things done, how to approach conversations, even through some of the mistakes that are along the way. So those conversations have been great, and I understand that Jennifer is leaving, and we'll identify another individual or another team of individuals that we can coordinate with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Ann?
Thank you, Holly,
Yes.
so much. I just wanted to say that I'm really proud of you and the DPA and the downtown owners that to start to really work together and put your differences aside and just join together. I think it's a really admirable thing, and it's a great example for our community of how we get things done better when we work together. So I really appreciate it, and appreciate all the work you've done and the organization you have so far.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
look forward to the work.
Becky?
Hi, Holly.
Hi.
To appreciate your transparency and your honesty and your perseverance. How long have you been in the position? It's quite
I started the end of April. I also, I had a honeymoon that was delayed because of COVID. So there was 2 weeks that I was out, but I was still working on learning the job and doing training while I was on my honeymoon. So really, I didn't start until like middle to end of May, really just kind of getting
So
the ground.
less than 10 months?
Yeah.
High expectations. You said the Main Street designation application was going to go in May? And that if we get it, it would be effective in January?
January, the first Monday
Do you
in
know when
January.
we might hear? Because that is a really big deal.
Yeah, so what I'm doing right now, I have a 4-month lead time on the application so that I can have 2 weeks between the feedback from Main Street to make sure that we've crossed everything, dotted everything, provided everything. I will be following up for letters of support. We'll have 4 interactions back and forth on the feedback, and then that'll be submitted, and then it goes out to a committee through the Main Street that will evaluate it. I have asked that question myself. I got an answer between June and July.
Oh,
is when I will hear
cool.
back. So I don't know if that will be happen, but I will be involved in that conversation.
And then my final question, and I'll address this with Welch Comer as well, but you've talked a little bit about communication, and I'm curious, going forward, do you have some defined roles, what you're supposed to do in communication? Has that already happened? Is that going to happen so we know what the expectations are?
Are you referring specifically to
the downtown,
project?
to the downtown project
Okay.
and to the businesses downtown. Could you talk a little bit about
Yeah.
what your role is, or if that's not quite yet defined, the process you're going to take to define
So
that?
as I understood it, through Phase 2, Welch Comer had a pretty well-defined plan, and as far as I know, it's been executed, and we're moving into Phase 3, which is what we've been working on together, those every 2 weeks, building out a communication plan. The things that I feel that the DPA should and can do is to have an active social media account with video and content, but also having that content shared out on our website and going downtown to the businesses a couple of times a week, not just once a week, but actively going out and talking to the businesses in the areas that are be directly impacted, and construction will be the primary focus. Not saying that our folks on Grant don't matter, they do, but making sure that businesses are being heard, questions are being asked, answers are being given, contacts and resources are being shared. And that's what our committees are working on. And I know I haven't been out presently in the last couple of months. That's because we've been building the foundation for what we're going into with you guys through Phase 3. And obviously, that's to be finalized through my board of directors, but that's the plan, that's been the discussion.
Thank
Just
you
to get
so
out there in
much.
front and talk to people.
I genuinely appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, Francis.
Thank you. You talked about the strategic and the process that you're going through, and I want to thank you and also your board because we've had Main Street programs in the past that haven't been sustainable and haven't lasted, and so I feel it's very important that a foundation that's a good foundation gets established. And you know, when we start the Downtown Association, everybody wanted to see immediate results.
Yeah.
And you could have gone out and done immediate results, but that didn't deal with the need for the foundation. And so I appreciate that you understand the importance of the foundation. And this is a long-term that the DPA is involved with. They're not just looking at a one-time, thing, but they're actually going to set this foundation. I appreciate for you and the board that just the direction that you're going that way. And even though we don't have all the results that we want right now, the foundation is going to be important in order for us to get those results and have them continue on. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been an interesting ride. But the executive director positions that I've been able to interact with in other communities have said you got to be careful of burnout because people want to put everything on you and have you just do it all. And again, grateful that my board of directors recognized that early on and slowed it down. It's like we have to have a solid foundation or we'll burn out. And we all, like you said, we had a mainstream program in the late 80s and it burnt out. And now we have an opportunity to learn from that, to learn from each other, and to move forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Holly.
Thank you.
Megan, okay? We've got a rather long agenda tonight, so thank you. And
I'm
next
available
comes
if you guys
our...
have any questions. Oh, here, let me just throw that up there.
Okay.
Get a hold of me there.
Next comes our final update from Welch Comer, and R.J. Lott's going to do the introduction, and we're looking forward to this report. I know you've got the 30,000-foot view, and we're looking forward to hear the report. So, R.J.?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I'm stepping in for Sean Coates, former Public Works Director, as staff on this project, along with Clayton Forsman. It's been a pleasure working with Welch Comer and their high level of professionalism. This evening, they'll talk about Phase 2 of this project, the downtown Pullman, and they will highlight a couple of items, including the 90% design and the bidding schedule, amongst other items. So without further delay, I have Matt Gillis of Welch Comer. Thank you.
Thanks, RJ. Good evening, Mayor, Council. 90%. So I think this is the fourth time we've been before this council just in the design phase. That doesn't count all the previous phases. And on behalf of myself and my colleagues, Courtney Kramer and Del Hatch, we're excited to be here, and because it's feeling more and more real every day as the pieces come together. And so out of respect for your time and the long agenda, I won't spend too much time wandering through what we're going to talk about. I'll just start talking about it. You've seen this graphic before. We were joking in the office just yesterday. This is a worker walking up the steps, and it's really more of a sprint up the steps because we've been under a very tight design schedule, and I'm pleased and very proud to let you know that we're on schedule. And so design phase is almost done. Construction is like, we can see it. We can see that ribbon at the finish line, which is actually a start line, I suppose. Real quick review of the overall scope that you directed us to design. So it's all of the colored elements here. So the prime project, the most expensive project, Main Street, Grand Avenue, small trail expansion on Davis Way, some little work on Olson, and I'll get into the detail of this as we get further. Some changes to Pine Street Plaza, and then finally some pavement marking modifications on both Pine and Kamiakin between Main and Paradise. So that was the whole breadth of the original scope of work that we have designed. The schedule we have been following, I just mentioned, we've met with you 4 times. We've met with the steering committee a couple times. All those interactions have given us great feedback. Not shown here is the ongoing and constant communication we've had with your staff, and it's been especially important after Sean moved on. Clayton and RJ and Mike have been great. Whenever we need them to give us direction on something, we've gotten it. And so that's one of the reasons that we're where we're at today. That's been a very fruitful relationship so far. I'm going to turn it over to Courtney real quick. She's going to just review what the outreach strategy that we did just in this design phase.
Good evening, Mayor Johnson, members of the Pullman City Council. Courtney Kramer, Public Involvement Specialist for Welch Comer Engineers. Our objectives for Phase 2 final design were in 3 parts: to raise community awareness of the coming project, to work with business and property owners to anticipate and mitigate construction challenges, and to collaborate with stakeholders, the steering committee, and the council to inform final design decisions. In terms of raising awareness, I think this is actually our 4th time in front of you. I think this is the 4th time we'll drive home in the snow in front of you this winter. Since October. I think it snowed in October. We've also provided an informational meeting for downtown property and business owners, as well as individual stakeholder email and phone calls, especially for property owners whose property is directly impacted by the project through a needed access easement or some type of challenge that would come up during construction. Then most recently, a slew of updates to the Project Downtown Pullman website as information has been finalized. We are very clear that we wanted during Phase 2 to only provide accurate and final information to the public. We wanted to avoid providing information that then we'd have to go try to chase people down to walk back. And so it's taken us really until the last 10 to 14 days to get some clear answers on things and be able to update the website in a pretty comprehensive way. We also worked with stakeholders to anticipate and mitigate construction challenges. It's been really effective and informative to work with property owners and business owners over the last couple of months. I'm really grateful for the investment of time that your City of Pullman staff, as well as that of the Pullman Chamber of Commerce and the Downtown Pullman Association, has made by spending time with me. Maybe I don't know what biweekly means, but every 2 weeks. I might have that wrong. That's been a really effective meeting. I have heard from the Southeast Washington Economic Development Association that they'd like to join us as well for those, so that's great. As well as, so my role has been to help the economic development organizations think through the impacts of construction and help us kind of sort out how can we help these businesses and property owners mitigate the impact of construction. And then as Welch Comer prepares information, the city of Pullman reviews and vets that information, and then the city of Pullman initiates, let's say, a social media post on it. It's the role of the Downtown Pullman Association and the Pullman Chamber of Commerce to help the city amplify your messaging. And we've really been grateful for those organizations' participation in that. And all of that information will gathered will inform our Phase 3 construction. We will talk about what the communication plan for Phase 3 looks like tonight, but it's later in the slide deck. Our team really needs to kind of cleanly end Phase 2 before we get too excited about Phase 3. So if you have questions, I'd ask that you hold them till then. And then these, informed final design selections, we've been really grateful for the partnership of a variety of stakeholder organizations that have a needed touch points. And so we've been able to meet with them in person and virtually as needed, sometimes with as little as 4 hours notice as we come down the home stretch on the final design. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Matt to talk through available funding. Thank you.
Before we get too involved with the 90% update, I did want to touch just very briefly on a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight is we have this much project and we have this much funding. And so we need to talk through, we have solutions, we have options, which we'll present to you. But I wanted to just review with you and the public the primary and sole funding for this project right now is ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan of 2021. You were given, and I think these numbers are right, 9.6 million and change. It's odd that it's such a defined amount of money, but whatever. After we peel off some planning costs, design costs, future construction management costs, and I think there were monies that were allotted to other organizations. I don't know the exact detail. The number we care about right now is how much do we have left for construction, and we've identified 6.9 million. Okay, so that's going to be important as we get a little bit further into here. And stop me at any point if you have questions. So Main Street, you've seen most of these images already because when we went from 30 to 60%, that 60% presentation, we had a lot to show because everything was starting to congeal. Now that we're in from 60 to 90, it's mainly the nerdy engineering stuff where we are sharpening the edges of the design. And it's interesting to me, but some of the hyper detail isn't as interesting. So a lot of images are the same, but Main Street is by far the biggest project. It is a complete overhaul, as you know. And by overhaul, I mean everything, all the utilities, so the water, the sewer, the storm, all the stuff you don't see, the electrical, the irrigation, the trees. We had great discussions about trees, new roadway, new lighting, so everything. Updates to some of the traffic signals. From there, the other project, well, actually, before I move on, we've got a 2-minute animation, and any of you, please stop me if it's too long, but this is of Main Street, and this, I think, will give you and the audience a pretty good idea of what it will look like when complete. And my understanding is the mayor has volunteered to narrate this video that we're providing a script for, which will be on the website for the public to see. So this is, let me pause this real, well, maybe I can't. Main Street looking down, that's Kamiakin. This is from Kamiakin looking west on Main. This is where we're still at 3 lanes. The sidewalks are a little narrower. Here's Pine Street intersection, Pine Street Plaza to the north. You see the bike lane on the north side. This is on the south side of the road, walking towards Kamiakin. This is Main again, continuing to head east. There's Paradise. Sorry, it's a little bit jerky. That's looking north at Pine Street Plaza with all the all the landscaping. This is flying west on Main. There's the Evolve building on the left. You see we're 2 lanes there with parallel parking both sides. This is from Pine Street walking west where we have much wider sidewalks there. You see the bike lane, plenty of room for tables. Again, flying west, there's the Pine Street intersection. And this is where we convert from 2 lanes to 3 lanes, and then we're right back to the Grand and Main intersection. Any questions on that, or let me know if you'd like to see it again. Happy to show it. Again, it will be posted to the website here pretty soon. We felt that it was worth the effort to produce this because it gives a concrete visual of what this may look like. Move on? Okay. So that was Main Street. Grand Avenue, the scope is very different. It is reconstruction of the sidewalk on the west side, but rehabilitation of the sidewalk on the east side, because remember, that's the top of Dry Creek. It's a big, very expensive drainage structure. If you remember, the strategy you gave us was, because we know at some point the DOT will approach the city and say, hey, the performance of Grand is suffering enough to where we need to improve capacity. And the way we do that is we remove the parallel parking and convert from 3 lanes to 5 lanes. The options we presented at 60% were, well, we could go to 5 lanes now, or we could ride it out. We could ride the 3 lanes, keep the parking for as long as we can, and then in the event that the DOT does require it, that gives the city time to address the loss of quite a few parking stalls. And so this is just a recap of that nothing's changed there. And that's involved a bunch of the DOT coordination, which has been great. And I'll get to that, more of that a little bit later. Olson, nothing's changed here. We're doing 3 primary things at Olson. We're converting from parallel parking to angle parking and dropping a lane each way. The traffic modeling allows it. So we have a net gain in parking there. We're building curb bulbs, which are, these guys. So that's the old curb. This is the new curb. What that does is it shortens the crosswalks. So anytime we can keep people out of the street, we improve safety. So that's a very good thing. And then finally, there are improvements to the traffic signals at each side, or at each intersection of Grand and Kamiakin. Sorry, I'm not sure what's going on. Davis Way. So if you're familiar with this area, which I know you are, right now the pedestrian facility on Davis, close to Grand, is about 4 or 5 foot wide concrete sidewalk. We're going to expand that to a 10-foot asphalt path to connect into the existing path that's up and around the corner to the west. Additional parking on, well, actually not additional, a change to the parking on Kamiakin and Pine. Right now they're parallel. We switched to angle parking on one side. Full disclosure right now, we've been working with this property owner. We may lose a few stalls right here because there's an existing approach that we were trying to close because there's alternative access, but that may not happen. So there could be some small changes there. And then Pine Street Plaza, I'll turn over to Dell, and he'll talk us through some of the landscape-related items. Oh, yes, sir.
1 second. With the parking, handicapped, I know that's been really very, very important. We need to keep that front and center. So,
sure, I can cover it in 15 seconds.
Awesome.
Nothing has changed from 60%. Still, the strategy is we will provide, in accordance with the standard, one accessible stall per block. Okay, so each of the blocks around the project will have an accessible stall, a wheelchair accessible stall.
Evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'll walk through some things here that I don't think are nerdy. I think there's a lot of fun stuff happening. We've talked about the opportunity to introduce the seat steps at the north side of Pine Street Plaza. That was something that was vetted not only with the public, but with our steering committee, and we presented to you folks as well. And it was a popular design component that we decided to include in the project. I know that we'll talk about it a little bit later here about the opportunities for the funding of it. The wayfinding is another element that we're working on as well. We've met with the wayfinding committee. The different asterisks that you see here, the red ones here and here, will be kiosks, major kiosks in terms of the wayfinding, and those will be incorporated into the project. Some of the other future locations for kiosks here to the north and down at the end of the project on the east side, and also at High Street Plaza. Kiosks at those locations may not go in under this project, but those would be future coordinated with the same design as the project would move forward. The blue asterisks that you see are directional orientation for public parking. Those will also be part of the wayfinding plan. We're working now with them we have two options that we're looking at, and we're leaning towards a commercial option for those kiosks. For the signage plan, we're looking at incorporating them with utilizing the same pole that our new lights will have. And I'll talk to the lights here in a little bit just to give you an idea of how versatile that pole is going to be. The yellow asterisks that you see here at Pine Street Plaza, there's one. We've got some down on the perimeter of the downtown. There are a number of pedestrian-oriented signs that will direct people to pedestrian linkages. Stop me at any point if you have some questions. We're going to talk about the Walk of Fame a little bit. We've talked about how, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to save the existing Walk of Fame plaques on the sidewalk. They'll be destroyed through demolition. So we're working towards developing a monument, more of a vertical monument, and we've got a refined drawing for you to see here in just a minute, that will essentially place on this drawing, just to orient you, this is at Main and Pine. The blue rectangles you see there, those four, would be the new monuments, and they would list the names for the four different categories for your Walk of Fame. In the drawing that you may have seen in the 60%, we had originally thought that we would have the Walk of Fame monuments, two on the north side of Main Street, two on the south side at Pine. But due to some restrictions on, let's say, northbound on Pine and sightline restrictions back to the east for oncoming traffic, we could not place one of those monuments on that corner. We felt that since we couldn't utilize all four corners, that it didn't make a lot of sense to have one on this side of Pine Street and three on the opposite side, so we've collectively placed them all on the north side. You also have a specific plaque in the sidewalk today that explains what the Walk of Fame program is about. That one will more than likely be a loss during demolition as well. So under this plan, we are proposing to put a bronze plaque in the sidewalk that explains the program. People will be able to, literally those monuments are probably no more than 30 to 34 feet apart in the furthest distance. So Once you're looking at one, you're going to be able to glance over to see the other one. You'll be able to see the heading of what the category is, so you can move safely without having to cross the street to experience that Walk of Fame program now. I mentioned that we will position a kiosk at Pine Street, and right now we're looking at placing it right there. You can see the bike lane as it moves through this area. It takes a little bit of curvilinear alignment, and that is primarily to give a little bit more space here at what is your bus stop. This particular intersection is a raised intersection, as we've talked about before, and the number of bollards that you see right there are protective bollards for the pedestrians. There are also the truncated domes to indicate that they would be stepping into the street, different than just locating them at the handicap ramps, for instance. Some decorative treatment to the center of this intersection. You can see that there are paver patterns or fields on both sides of the street, some up and through here. And this is moving or impacting slightly into existing Pine Street Plaza. One of the things that we have tried to do is that these two trees right here are set in the center of a very strong circular pattern that Pine Street Plaza has been designed to. And those circular patterns move northward through the plaza. We've purposely limited our improvements into the plaza to stay out of those circles and impact that as least we can to what that existing plaza design is and always has been. One last thing that I'll point out here with regard to the plaza, that this was an element of, or I should say a requirement that got to us a little bit later, is that should you have flooding conditions, there would need to be access into the plaza with a front-end loader up into here to remove debris, et cetera. So we have left that center portion open for that access, or should there be an emergency, an ambulance could get in there. So those three bollards that you see right there, those will be removable bollards. Those can be taken out of the way. Vehicular access can get into the plaza. Before I move on, I'll touch on the trees just a little bit. As you know, we have all new trees in the project. We're very close to the same count of trees that you have downtown now. Actually, I think we might be one or two less, and I'll explain. And that is because of an impact to an existing fiber optic line where we cannot put trees directly over that. Otherwise, we're very close to the count. Right now, we're looking at species that we have been very closely coordinating with your Parks Department, your urban forester, and your city horticulturalist. We've been in contact multiple times, offering what we think might be an appropriate tree, taking their recommendations for what they feel might be the appropriate tree. We now feel that we have come up with the genus and species of trees that we're both comfortable with, we feel are the most appropriate for your downtown. I can tell you that they mostly have more of a columnar crown to the trees, so they're not spreading into buildings or spreading out into traffic ways. For the most part, the smaller, more what you might consider ornamental trees will be happening near intersections. So at Pine Street, those 4 trees would be smaller trees with a bloom in the spring and good color in the fall. The Main Street tree, which are here, and then continuing both eastward and westward, is a red maple variety, also columnar. And then we're looking at some honey locust varieties for the Grand Avenue application. So we're very close to fully nailing those trees down. We've been doing some research on their availability, and we feel pretty comfortable that we have a pretty good agreement between us and your city staff. Yes, ma'am.
Dell, on the Walk of Fame, will those plaque standards, if will, be expandable? So we'd have the ability to continue to add names?
Yes, let me Let me just move on to the next slide, and I think I can show you where we're going with that.
Sorry.
The drawing that we showed you at the 60% was very close to this version. The material of the column itself is looked to be a Corten steel, and we have worked through this design with the committee, with the exception they have not seen this yet for a full approval of the very top. They had asked us to go back and look at how we might cap this thing in a simple way that would still allow us to have the category of the honorees at each of the 4 columns. And this is what we're looking at now and suggesting to happen. Each side of that column will have a black granite plaque. Each one is in the neighborhood of 32 to 40 inches in height by about 22 to 24 inches in width. So our calculations, just looking at your brochure, the number of names, right now we think today you could put all of your honorees in each category on one plaque. And then there are 3 more plaques of the similar size for expansion into the future. The idea is that these plaques, rather than being just perfectly vertical, are slightly canted back, and they'll have a LED light at the top. As you can see, as we've illustrated there, that will wash down and light up these elements in the evening. Previous drawing we showed you had some potential for some cutouts into the body of the column. We think that probably detracts from the simplicity of the monument, so we've removed that. We're working on the final construction detail of this right now. Any further questions on that?
Can I
one?
assume that you'll work with the committee to make any corrections on those plaques that were in there, so we can make sure they're correct?
Yes, sir, we will. Very briefly, you've seen a very similar slide to this before as well. In working with the steering committee, we've come up with this furniture family for the downtown of the bench, where we have options for both a backless bench and a bench with a back of the same manufacturer. They specifically asked us to have a trash receptacle that did not have the flare at the top. There's a lot of issues with those collecting more than they can actually hold, and they eventually just spill out. You folks already are utilizing an attractive Corten steel planter in your downtown in various areas, so we're looking to the potential to augment that in different areas. The clay pavers that we have talked about will be primarily set in a herringbone pattern, but rather than having a straight maroonish red and a gray, it will actually be mottled. They will be blended. We're going to reuse all of your existing bike racks. It was felt by the committee that the bike rack that you have today is still a very workable bike rack. Those are a stainless steel. They're in pretty good shape. So we're going to take all of the bike racks during demolition, have them set aside, and then we will reinstall those and potentially install even a few more. There's an example of our bollards, of a fixed bollard and a fixed lighted bollard. A few of the bollards at Pine Street will be lit, just to kind of give a little bit more definition to that curb line. To that curb line area. And again, as I mentioned, one of the bollards will be a removable bollard, and it will look just like the one on the left. So I talked a little bit about the light. This is the light that the committee chose, was their preference for continuing or for introduction to the downtown as our street light. The pole height right now is being looked at 14 feet. These light fixtures are significant in size, so they're probably in that 15 to 18 inch height. So the light source itself is at that 15-foot height. The nice thing about these poles is that they're slotted and they have an integral system of attachments, such as the banner arms that can be slid to within the slot on the pole to any location with a lock nut that can tighten them into place. Very flexible, the same with the flower baskets. So what we're doing with each pole is there will be drip irrigation within the pole will come out so that it will have an opportunity to water hanging baskets. Each pole will be specified with 4 arms, so that could support a banner and 2 baskets on each pole. The only thing that will be different from this light to what we're specifying is the base that you see on that light, right here, will be about half the height. It will only be about that high. Be a very similar shape, but won't go up quite that high. That was also a preference by the steering committee. Yes, sir.
So, looks amazing, and I like the flow. I mean, everything seems to kind of have this swooping flow, even the benches. My question with the lights, and there's two questions with this. So, downtown we have mixed use, and having lights that are kind of, really bright, tall, can go into those windows, and also dark skies. So something that I'm really interested in is dark skies program, reducing light pollution.
Mm-hmm.
We have some magnificent, skies here on the Palouse. How much does that add to the light pollution? Is there a way to put a top on that so that the light can be mainly down instead of all over?
Yeah, it's a good question. All of these lights, and you can see, looking at the fixture here, all of these lights will have no light escaping upward. They all shine down. We will have taller lights at the intersections, and they will be very similar to what you have now. That's more, has that, well, for lack of a better term, we'll say that cobra arm that comes out over the highway or the intersections. Put a little bit more light at those pedestrian crossings. Those also have a downward cast, as you know. So we've looked at this and designed it for a full non-pollution from a standpoint of escaping of the light. Any questions? Okay, I'll turn it back to Matt.
Thanks, Del. Okay, this, real quick, I wanted to review this again, or remind you, because we have talked about this before, that the plan for Main Street in 2023 is to close Main Street, and we have worked very, very closely with the DOT because it is their road. They are supportive of this. Closing Main Street will require us to temporarily convert Paradise to 2 directions, right? Right now it's just one way, now it'll be 1 lane in each direction. That complicates things for trucks, especially large trucks, especially the westbound right turn onto Grand from Paradise, where the restaurant is there. I can't remember the name exactly, but so we will, another item that we've coordinated with the DOT is an acceptable truck route or a truck detour, which is shown here, which Courtney's been spending time with the stakeholders in the trucking industry, but this is Bishop. So trucks can take the Bishop to Grand detour. Yes, it's a little bit out of the way, but if a large, say Walmart truck happens to find themselves on Paradise taking a right, they can do it, but it will inconvenience the entire intersection for a while. So I'd like to say that no trucks will attempt it, but they will. We will have clearly signed truck detour routes. We'll get some literature sent out prior to try to minimize that. But I just wanted to let you know that. Yes, sir.
Just a point of information for the City Council, when CIP met last week, there is a plan for paving on Bishop Boulevard this summer, but within that plan, because there is a center turn lane, pave one side, the center turn lane will continue the route. So there'll always be two-way traffic on Bishop, even during the construction of that piece. So just in case that question comes up later.
No, thank you. So speaking of the DOT, we want to make sure that the thing that doesn't delay our project is some missed coordination element with the DOT. And so we are working with them every single week, multiple times a week, with many different departments, making sure that we understand the requirements and we address those requirements. Clayton has even got us a meeting with a higher level DOT staffer that will help further clarify anything that needs to get done. So it's going great. We're working through these items right now. Okay, we need to talk about funding and construction cost. So in the construction industry for the last 20 years, it's been, I'm not going to say easy, but it's been predictable. There's been a slow increase in construction costs, just like in our normal lives. Things get more expensive. Well, 2-3 years ago, everything changed. And so we've got this massive spike in, well, everything. You know this, right? In the construction industry hasn't been left behind. And so it's very difficult at this point to anticipate what construction will be. And so will prices level out? Well, maybe. Will they fall? I don't know. If I knew that, I would be in a totally different industry. So some examples of that are, you see asphalt there. We have an old pricing item and a current pricing item. By old pricing, I just mean 3 years ago, okay, which isn't very long ago. So we were paying $70 a ton, and now we're paying $175 a ton. And we have thousands of tons on our project. Concrete sidewalk, more than doubled in price per square yard. Curb and gutter, almost doubled. Water line, which we have a lot of all of these items. The water line is more than a quadruple in pricing. So we're hopeful these prices normalize this summer, but we just don't know. So again, as I mentioned earlier, you have 9.6 million. The number we care about right now is 6.9 million. Just to be clear right now, we think just Main Street right now is $7.8 million. Now, don't panic quite yet, because that 7.8 million is our estimate, and we have a 10% contingency in that number, and I'm trying to be conservative. My hope is when we open bids, I'm the high bidder, okay? That's the hope. I just don't know. The nature of estimating this stuff is we're always a step behind construction, the contractor industry. They've got their real-time costs in front of them. We just have the last cost they published. So that is, I hope it's conservative, but it's not all bad news, because we want to put Pullman in a place of success, and I'll get into why here. But so Main Street, $7.8 million in there somewhere. Grand Avenue, almost 1.6. Olson, you see as we go down here, the costs of these. When we get down to the total construction cost, not project cost, just the construction, what we're showing over here nowadays, we think, is about a $10.5 million project. So the math is easy, right? We've got 6.9. And so we're about a deficit of 3.6. And so how do we set Pullman up to where it's not just, well, we bid everything and we award everything, or we award nothing? That we wouldn't be doing our jobs if that was the option. So we think setting this up in some type of base bid plus an add alternate scenario works. And so what that means is you select what, okay, here's the base bid, here's what we can't live without, okay? And in this case, it's going to be Main Street, which I'll recommend. And then everything else we put into the add alternate category, to where we can award it or we don't award it based on the available funding. But we still have Main Street, right? We can walk away with something good. We're not spreading the peanut butter too thin, okay? So our recommendation is we select Main Street as, excuse me, the base bid. And the Main Street items in the base bid, in my view, are the infrastructure critical items. Sorry, it's the things that can't be included later on. So the benches, the bike racks, the garbage cans, the things you see here, the portable planter boxes. It's really from this point forward. All of those things can be added at a later time. Then we've got the $18,000, not the Walk of Fame monuments, but rather the illumination of those monuments. Del talked about that a little bit. The monuments are part of the base bid. If we're going to tear out the Walk of Fame monuments, we got to put them back. And so that's in the base bid. Olson, Davis, Pine Street, Grand, and then this bottom one was the traffic signal interconnection of all the signals, so they talk to one another. Everything in this list would go to an ad alternate. I'm sorry. So within this recommendation, we kind of have two options. One, we'll call it option one, just Main Street. We select Main Street as the base bid, but we only include the Main Street ad alternates. So really what that means is in 2023, in this project, we focus only on Main Street, okay? The rest of the stuff, we forego for now until further funding can be found. Because I think this is all the city can most likely afford. The other option is we do that, but we bid everything else. So we do everything. We do Main Street's the base bid, but everything else is an alternate. Okay? So, does that make sense so far?
How long would the alternate bids be viable? I mean, when you start bidding these things, you have only so much time to take care of it. And usually all the contractors know that they have a certain time window and they can work with.
I might be able to answer that on the next
Okay.
slide. It might be an indirect way to answer it. But we recommend option one, and here is why. The size of the project, in my view, only lends to a 2023 construction of Main Street. I don't think we can get everything done. I think that would be pretty traumatic on your town to tear everything up at once. So Main Street is 2023. Everything else would be 2024. Now, if you're a contractor and we ask them to bid everything, say we went with option two, we say, okay, contractor X, give us a price for Main Street in 2023 and everything else in 2024. So they're thinking, oh, I have to hold my price. I have to give you a price in early 23, and I won't do the work until early or mid 24. That creates risk to a contractor. Increased risk increases price. Pretty simple. So we think that by advertising and including everything right now, we're going to get high, very high bids on the alternates because they're so far out. The other thing we could unintentionally do if we go with option two is we could exclude certain contractors that don't have the bonding capacity of a $10.5 million project, right? Because we need to tell them, yeah, our estimate is $10.5 million. Their bonding company might say, that's more than your allotment. So they might not be able to bid. And we don't want that. We don't want to limit the pool of contractors for Pullman. Also, contractor availability, the bigger the project, the more resources it demands. And if we want, one, local contractors, and if we want contractors that are going to give us their full attention, we need to have an appropriately bite-sized project. The $7 million project, I think, will attract, or an $8 million project will attract a pretty good array of contractors. I'm hopeful we'll pull people from even outside the area. The final thing, in my view, this is a little, I just get on my moral soapbox for a second. If we are pretty certain that we can't award things like Grand and some of these higher dollar items that put us in the $9–10 million price range right now, it seems disingenuous to me to ask a contractor for the prices, because that's a lot of time, expense, and resources for the contractor community to do that if we're not going to award anything. So we can call that a Matt's personal opinion, but I believe it's a factor. Any questions on that so far? Yes, ma'am.
Could you go back to the two different options there for a moment? The way you've explained it, Matt, makes total sense to me, with one exception, the ITS interconnect. To have the lights speak to each other, don't we have to have the streets already torn up to have that part in? In other words, wouldn't it be worth it to ask for a bid, like option one, but add in the ITS interconnect, so that, wouldn't we have to kind of redo the project anyway?
If we included the ITS interconnect in option one, we'd have to tear up those other streets so we could get the
Okay.
conduit in there.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Yes, sir.
Thank you. So mine has to do with, I know you said you don't have the crystal ball, and as you're looking at just the direction of where costs are going, is there anything out there in industry that's saying how long we expect this ramp to go? Or is industry saying they're feeling like it's a bubble, or are they feeling like this is just where things are at and it's going to continue?
Quick story. 2 weeks ago, I opened a bid for a smaller project, less than $1 million project. And in Post Falls, we had 9 bidders. And I thought, wow, I've never had 9 bidders on a project. So I immediately start thinking, oh, everybody's hungry. And so there isn't much work out there, so prices are going to come down. And prices were low. They were much lower than our estimate. So I'm thinking, hey, this is great. And immediately I'm thinking about Pullman. Then late last week, we opened bids on another project in the Kootenai County area. It was $800,000 over our estimate. And so I don't know. I just don't know at this point, because as that graph showed, it's climbing at a rate never seen before. And yeah, it's very tough to answer. I want to be able to say, yes, it's going to level off. I just don't.
But realistically, we're all looking at some of these numbers, and they're not getting any better.
Yeah, I think that's right, Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor. I don't see things getting cheaper.
No.
No, sir.
And the quicker we go out to bid, the better we're going to be. And I know that you're under a deadline right now trying to get the bids ready to go.
Yeah, that is not a factor. We'll be ready for 2023, no question. Okay, so I think we need, and Tad, we might need your or Mike's direction on this. I don't know that we can do a roll call vote, but it'd be great to have.
Sorry, one quick.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
we've got still some other things, yeah.
So, now I'm bringing this up because this has been brought up by some business owners that I've talked to. Some are feeling already pinched because of COVID and recovering from COVID, and then jumping into this project, tearing up the streets, potential, likely, hit to their revenue stream.
Mm-hmm.
And a few have asked, can it be pushed back another year? And I'm not saying, I hear some from this side saying something. I'm not saying that, right or wrong. I'm asking you, survivability of downtown businesses during this construction cycle. It's a lot to ask, It's already been asked about the prices, whether they're going to come down or not. And we saw back in 2003 or 5, went up, came back right back down. So I guess this is just kind of hypothetical if it is pushed back a year.
Well, I'm fully aware that's your call, but is it physically possible to delay the project? Well, of course it is. Of course it is. Is it wise? I don't know. I'll leave that to you. All I can tell you is the project that you asked for is designed and ready to go. And so the schedule would be, this will be ready to advertise in third week of March. We'll open bids middle of April. We'll award it to the last council meeting in April. Then we'll work very quickly with whatever contractor we get, have a pre-construction meeting, we'll do a bunch of paperwork, contracts will have to pass back and forth, and then we'll be on the ground ready to go in the middle of May, or third week of May, middle to third week of May. So I can just tell you what we can do. I'll leave that to you, whether it's wise, unwise to delay it a year.
Yeah, just for the sake of clarity, Courtney, thank you for focusing on the truck delivery thing. There's a lot of talk about that. And I saw the map that you guys drew up for the alternative detour truck route for Bishop Boulevard. I can hear it tomorrow, and I can see it in the paper the day after tomorrow. Why didn't they do a bypass? Why didn't they do this truck route thing in the first place? And because there's been some editorials in the paper lately about kind of making that this is an either or, that we either, if we didn't do downtown, then we could have done the truck bypass, and see, here it is, the consultant is going to suggest that anyway. So give me 25 words or less how I answer people when they jump all over us about this, and I know their names, and you know their names as well, who are going to have a fit about this, and they're going to say, see, this is what should have happened in the first place.
Can I crack at it first?
Absolutely.
It's apples and oranges completely. So we have a downtown revitalization is a completely different flavor of product and motivation than a truck bypass. So that's one thing. Also, you've got an $8 million project. Truck bypass is tens of millions of dollars, right?
Say that louder, please.
Yeah. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's tens of millions. 50 million, I'm not sure exactly. So very, very, very different projects. Do you have anything else to add?
Ditto what Matt said.
So, Mr. Mayor, are there any other questions?
Yeah, there's a question
Yes,
from
ma'am.
Pat.
And this is probably more out of not knowing the full story here, but with the expenditures of the ARPA dollars, aren't we looking at a time frame in which those dollars have to be spent?
So ARPA dollars to be spent or under contract by the end of 2024.
So I think that is something that we need to take into account as we are even thinking about the possibility of delay.
Very good
Okay.
point.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Matt, for this before we get to that, and especially that last question, is it the right thing to do? Because I think for council, what we have to think about is this the right thing for our community? This project has been about community from the very beginning, and focusing on what is right for Pullman in general, not necessarily specific individuals, how they benefit or not, although we always want to work with all of our citizens. But in general, how does this benefit the community? And so I just wanted to make that comment that these 5 bullet points are very useful, and especially the 5th one is what is best for Pullman now? Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. They're asking for direction, and someone would like to make a motion in terms of direction?
And that direction is focused on
option one
these
or
two
option
directions,
two.
yes, sir.
And Thad, did you want to add something to it?
Yeah, I think just a head nod is fine
Okay.
for this. I don't think there's a formal motion
Okay.
needed.
So how about a head nod for option one?
Yes.
Okay, I'm seeing a lot of head nods. The majority head nods. Option two for everything? Okay, one head nod. I turn my head both directions, but I don't count on this particular thing. In terms of doing it now, should we just ask that question too, as we go along?
Yes.
Get it over with, yes. Right, and that's the majority. So we get moving on the thing quicker. And again, we've been talking about this thing for a long time. And we've set everything up for this summer. And we're doing our best to make sure we can keep everybody going the best way we can through back doors or whatever else. We got to get it done. Otherwise, you delay it, it goes, the prices goes all the way. We've been seeing that. It's just very clear. The longer you delay, the higher the price is going to be. So we'll get the majority nod.
Thank you for the direction.
Okay. And the quicker you get out to bid, the faster we can get going on this thing. Yeah.
So thank you. That, since I'm such a physical person, right, that closes out for us the part of this presentation about Phase 2. So I'm going to do a little bit, I think I have 4 slides that is forward-looking to Phase 3. These are very much our recommendations. We've been talking a lot about what Welch Comer's scope of work looks like for Phase 3, but we wanted to share that with you tonight because it is so important to those impacted stakeholders. I do want to say thank you for the compliment on the truck route. I would like to thank my 2 uncles and cousins at the Super Bowl party who gave me the list of every Grange Hall and ag servicer in Whitman County so that we could appropriately share postcards and all of that kind of stuff. I kept saying I was very worried about, the farmer's wife in a grain truck coming down Main Street in August and going, oh God, where do I go now? So we have a really good plan of connecting with those folks. So we do want to acknowledge significant infrastructure reconstruction is disruptive. It's challenging, especially for organizations like the City of Pullman, to reinvest in an established neighborhood with over 300 stakeholders, right? You guys, the City of Pullman, is pretty experienced now at putting in new subdivisions, but maybe you have as many as 10 stakeholders in that. You have the developer, the designer, the contractor, maybe a bank that's involved. You don't have 300 people going, wait a minute, what? How do we stay up to speed on that? So the construction phase communication actually has 2 sub-phases. Before construction begins, we will do a mailer to downtown property and business owners that's drafted and will hopefully go out this week. We will also schedule one-on-one meetings with each property and business owner. Best case scenario is to get a property and business owner in the same room, tenant and landlord as well. We will also hold an additional property and business owner meeting with the selected contractor to discuss the construction timeline. That means that won't happen until late April. We are very clear that any time that we dictate a timeline to the contractor, we increase the project price. We're committed to communicating, and I'll show you what that looks like about phasing as soon as we can do so accurately. I joke that in Phase 3, my job is to build the railroad track about 2 weeks before the freight train gets here, and so we are going to try to make sure that folks know what's coming. During construction, this goes back to what I said earlier, Welch Comer will produce, and for the city's approval, project-specific communication that will be shared out by the city and our partners. And our economic development organizations are prepared to take this opportunity to leverage new branding and marketing opportunities. I really want to drive home that a community that reinvests in itself attracts additional private reinvestment. And Pullman has a very unique draw in who comes back to Pullman for various events at the university, and those folks often are looking for investments, and seeing a community invest in itself will encourage additional private investment. And I'm really excited to see what downtown Pullman looks like by 2030. We held a great property and business owners meeting in this room in December and really heard from our constituents. Participants want information about about disruptions to expect during construction, access to financial resources to support their business, and information about developing a marketing plan to help their businesses. And the feedback really kind of bucketed out into 3 bubbles, I guess we'll say. One is a communication push to the general public, shown in green. And this is everything from, you're coming downtown, you're going to park at the parking lot on Paradise Street and use the new freshly updated back entrance to go into businesses there. To businesses are still open, to here's how you use the temporary sidewalks and accessibility. And then on the other end is the property and business owner communication. That's got to be timely. We've got to minimize access disruptions and also opportunities to discuss utilities improvements. We've had a lot of conversations with property owners to say, hey, if you've been thinking about putting in a fire suppression line so that you can put fire sprinklers into your building, now is the time. Because if you don't